The little intro thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, I need my microphone. That would help.
Oh, yes. Got to be as legit as possible.
Is that different?
It is different.
Okay. All right. Wait, you want me to hit this thing, right? Hang on. Perfect. Welcome back, everybody, to another Tennessee Holler Hour. I am Justin. This is Cassie. Hope you all had a really good Thanksgiving. We took the Thursday off last week, but we are tnholler.com, at the TN Holler, all of these other hollers throughout the state made possible by you all. Thank you so much for all the support and the help. You can go here and subscribe and support and get one of these sweet hats that we're wearing. Cassie, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. Yeah, just kind of recovering from eating a lot of food this past week. How about you?
So much food, yes. Sadly, we didn't celebrate with our family the way we usually do just because it's the safer way to be these days, and hopefully we can get back to normal here pretty soon. But we still had a good time with the kids. People should know that this is the Holler Hour, so we want you to jump in and let us know if you have anything to holler about. Ask us for the link, and we'll give it to you. You can jump in. And also today we're going to be talking about the TNDP Chairs race, and we're going to be picking out of a hat to decide who is going to be in the forum and when, because we have 8 or 9 candidates for the chairs race in the TNDP. And next Wednesday and Thursday, I believe, we're going to have 2 back-to-back forums, and you guys can join and ask your questions. And we'd also love to know from you today what questions you want them to answer. I think, it'll be a good time to ask those questions of these people and get to the bottom of, who they are as people and what makes them best suited for this position. So I'm actually interested to hear it. I know I paid attention to the last chairs race, and, I always wanted it to be more public. I think that's always really helpful.
I completely agree. I think that I'm really excited about the fact that we're doing this and that we're partnering with Change TN on this. For the exact same reason. I mean, this process is kind of obfuscated for most of the public. It's something that's not really, at least before I got into politics, I had no idea how this worked.
Right.
So just kind of bringing more of that knowledge to the people, I think, is always a really powerful thing, like transferring that knowledge, making sure that people know how this process works. And that even though we don't directly vote on who the chair is, like Democrats don't get to vote on that directly, you do have representatives in your Senate district that do vote on that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But hopefully this will bring a little bit more transparency to the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, if you want to jump in today, message us for the link. If you have any questions that you want asked at the Chairs Forum, let us know. Before we get to the Chairs Forum stuff and picking out of the hat, we just wanted to talk about a few things that have happened. First and foremost, November just wrapped up with the worst month that we've had during this pandemic, 7,900 deaths or cases, another 48 deaths, worst month of the pandemic by far. And yet Bill Lee still does nothing. It's completely infuriating. We even have ex-Republican senators like Bill Frist calling for him to implement a statewide mask mandate, and he still will not do it. Apparently, it's just never going to happen no matter what he does, no matter what happens. And it's really just an abdication of his duty. He's derelict. And, again, this is not just about health. It's also about the economy that he claims to hold dear. This is the right thing to do, and he just won't do it, possibly because he's just dug in so deep at this point. We see a study that Forbes talked about, that mask mandates are better for the economy than local ones. It just makes sense. It's logic.
Common sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if you've got people coming to your state or your county that are not wearing masks and bringing the disease in and
Right.
bringing it back, that's just no way to go about this. So the longer this goes on, the longer we prolong this, the more people are going to be hurt, the more people are going to be in food line at food banks, which, what we're seeing is very blatantly people are calling it a K-shaped recovery, but I heard somebody the other day call it an FU-shaped recovery, which I thought was really the exact right way to look at it. I mean, we're erasing gains from the bottom, and there's a sucking sound of money going to the top. And obviously the stock market is doing great, but that's not good for everybody. That doesn't help everybody.
No, that definitely doesn't reflect how the country is doing. I mean, most people in this country don't hold stocks, and the fact that billionaires have gotten tremendously wealthier during all of this, while the rest of the country, which is the vast majority of the country, is just bleeding money right and left. And where you look at other countries that are actually paying not only individuals but businesses, like they're like, we want to talk about things that we could be doing economically here. Most other industrialized modern countries are paying their citizens and businesses to sustain themselves through the pandemic, and they have overall lower rates of transmission, of deaths, of all of these
and we're not doing that because we don't have the resources. We're not doing it because half the country or majority of a political party doesn't believe in helping people. They fundamentally don't believe that the government should be helping people, unless it helps them politically.
And it's the profit, certain people are profiting off of this.
Right. It's profiteering for sure. And, ultimately they benefit from smaller government because that means fewer taxes and, fewer programs for people. So we've now seen Biden start to pick his economic cabinet and his comms cabinet, and there are sort of positive signs that there's going to be more of a focus on workers, that there's going to be more centering of our income inequality issue, which is out of control. We're at Gilded Age levels of inequality. So just even saying those words, income inequality, being willing to talk about that, that's a step in the right direction. Whether or not they follow through, we'll see. But the fact that this is even part of the narrative right now is a positive step.
Yeah, I I think his cabinet picks have been kind of a mixed bag so far, but I mean, we don't need to go through them one by one necessarily.
We knew we were going to get a mixed bag though, right? Like,
of course,
Bernie's not the nominee, not the president. So, we knew we were going to get a mixed bag. I'm not by any means saying like we're in the clear and we should stop pressuring them, but we do have people who are willing to acknowledge that inequality is an issue.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I agree. I mean, it's not like it's unexpected by any means, but that means that I think that people really need to be, I think that it's a good thing to be clear-eyed about at the same time, where it's like, there are some people that, are saying some promising things and are a bit more on the progressive end of the spectrum, and that's fantastic. Then there are other folks that I'm pretty concerned about. And I think it's just good to acknowledge that it is a mixed bag, and to go into it with, okay, so we've got this administration that we can work more with. There's some good people that are going to be leading the country now, in this mixed bag, I suppose. And but we need to pressure them because when people lead, politicians follow. And so we've got politicians that are overall, I think, going to be more willing to follow, but it has to come with public pressure. So, I think that it's just always good to remind folks to not sit back. This is something that we're going to have to keep, we're going to have to pressure the Biden administration, and that's okay. That's the way it works.
For sure. We're already seeing murmurs of potentially another aid package coming. There was a bipartisan, it's not really bipartisan when Manchin's the Democrat, but an idea just under $1 trillion, which is nowhere near what Democrats were proposing, but there were some things in there that they wanted. And then you had Mitch McConnell, who was on the Senate floor saying there is no reason why we should not pass another stimulus package.
There's no reason, none, why we should not deliver another major pandemic relief package to help the American people through what seems poised to be the last chapters.
Great. You should tell that to Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, you're the one that's keeping it from happening. And, there was this back and forth between Mark Cuban and Alexandria
Right.
Ocasio-Cortez last week where, Mark Cuban, who I really like, was sort of playing into the idea that the both sidesism of this debate where, it's as though anytime there's a disagreement, both sides are at fault, even if one side is specifically saying we are not going to do this thing. So, I think people are getting lost in the minutia of the argument, but at the end of the day,
so easy to do. Yeah.
Right. But at the end of the day, the House passed a bill. The Senate has not even introduced one. And, they can argue about the numbers, but, this $500 billion amount seems to be not enough. They aren't addressing state budgets. They're not, helping a lot of the people that need the help. And they seem to be just trying to run out the clock because at the end, what Republicans seem to want is to get to a Biden administration where it becomes his fault.
Right. It's all a political game. And it's horrible because we're in essentially another depression right now. And there are just a lot of different ways that the Trump administration and the GOP are trying to set the next administration up, the Biden administration up for failure.
Right.
And it's not something that your everyday person who has, actually has hobbies and and is not obsessed with politics like I am,
right.
Is necessarily paying attention to. So it's really easy to get lost in the minutia of, it's the sort of both sidesism. And I generally the first person to say the Democrats typically need to do a lot more than they do, spend more of their political capital than they do on fighting for people. However, on this, and so you have to take it issue by issue. And on this issue, the Republicans are not passing this. It's on Mitch McConnell for not taking up this bill. And so he just tries to obfuscate and tries to redirect, just to try to prolong not having to pass anything so that we can get to the next administration.
Right.
And throw Biden under the bus.
That finger pointing is sort of where the devil hides. Whenever there's finger pointing, if we just throw up our hands and say, oh, they're both doing it, that is why they do it.
Right.
So you have to understand who to blame in those situations and point the finger in the right place, or else you're rewarding them for doing what they're doing by throwing up your hands and calling it both sides. And that's sometimes going to be the Democrats. But in this situation, It's really not.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing that just came out while we were about to get ready to come on here is that Bill Barr has now come out and said that he hasn't uncovered widespread voting fraud that could have changed the 2020 election. And then even since then, the Republican Party and Trump's lawyers said, oh, he's really just not looking hard enough. But what I thought was funny and what I sort of saw coming a mile away was now because they've called this whole thing rigged, they have people in Georgia going, well, why do we even bother to show up and vote for these people, if it's rigged anyway? And so this was funny to sort of see Ronna McDaniel getting a taste of her own medicine here.
No idea. I was coming to Georgia for that. Yeah. Yeah, we have to. We didn't see that in the audit.
See, she's already saying we didn't see that in the audit. Her voters are saying, well, it's rigged and he won and, why should we even show up? And she's saying we haven't seen that in the audit. Now they're having to counter their own message by saying, no, please show up.
That evidence I haven't seen. So we'll wait and see on that.
They're just digging this hole for themselves.
Right.
It's not decided.
It's not decided.
It's not decided. First of all, Purdue still has 100,000 votes.
Right. It's not decided. So, everything's rigged except also please show up to vote because it's not actually
exactly.
rigged.
It's so transparent. And it's also really funny because who is also going to listen to her? The cult followers are all going to follow Trump. They're not going to listen to her. Who goes out even on the for Democrats? Who goes out and listens to Tom Perez on stuff?
Right.
On really anything.
Right. And so he doesn't exactly have a loyal following. And meanwhile, Trump is retweeting, his followers saying, watching the Arizona hearings, why bother voting for Republicans if what you get is Ducey and Kemp? Yes, Carmine, you make a great point. Dean Browning says, who needs Democrats when you have Republicans like Kemp and Ducey? Yes, Dean. Yes, exactly. Who needs them? Don't bother.
Who needs them?
And Trump's retweeting this to his 40, 50 million followers. They must be like, what have we done? This is our Frankenstein.
And Kemp being wrapped up in all of this is just hilarious.
Right.
Me,
Like
because he is like the devil.
yeah,
Like he's a horrible
right.
person.
Right. Who is more up Trump's ass than Brian Kemp? And here he is being painted as this, liberal lefty with Raffensperger out there, who was a Trump supporter, now getting death threats from Trump supporters. And, he even had to come out and be like, you people are complicit if you don't speak out against this. This was Raffensperger. Let me see if I have it in Georgia just yesterday.
Once this recount is complete, everyone in Georgia will be able to have even more confidence in the results of our elections. Despite the massive amounts of misinformation that is being spread by dishonest actors, there are those who are exploiting the emotions of many Trump supporters with fantastic claims, half-truths, misinformation.
Yeah, I mean, and this guy is literally getting death threats, and he wrote an op-ed about how his family and he all supported Trump. I mean, he's a Trump supporter, but that doesn't mean that he's willing to throw democracy under the bus and, essentially potentially commit a crime, to get this guy elected. So this is where we are.
Yeah. I mean, at least the bar is there for him. He's not willing to commit a crime.
Right.
Right. We have found, than it already has been.
Right. We have found the limits of some of these people.
For some of them.
For some of them. Yes. I mean,
where does this
I wasn't
go?
sure there were any.
Yeah, I know. Well, where does this go after this? Like with those that are like so low, like the OANN, like, Newsmax, like followers, like where does, I don't know. Where does,
I think that's sort of
Trump,
the plea, right? Like that's the plea that we have to make to reasonable Republicans. If you're out there, how far down the path are you going to go with these people? And I can guarantee you that if I saw this happening in the Democratic Party and they were doing all this to follow somebody, I would not be a part of it. And we would speak out. Like, this is just, it's cultish behavior. And if you are not among them, why not take a stand? Why not speak out? Why not, sort of help hasten the recovery of that party by ensuring that they lose some elections? Because that is the only way this is ever going to change. This will not change as long as they win elections. This is only about power.
That's where the base is too. And that's what's kind of scary is like, you talk about like, left versus the right, like who's organized, where does the energy come from? Like on the left, it's the more progressive wing of the party. And for the right, it's them. Like that's where the energy is, unfortunately. And so like I'm kind of at a loss with it. But I am curious to see what happens. People talk about Don Jr. I don't see him actually being able to carry the torch. Like Trump, I think is like a really interesting and sort of special figure in who he is.
But it's hard to see where the breaks are, which is what you're saying. Yeah. Like how does this stop? How do they come back from the ledge? How do they start nominating? Because right now in the Republican primaries, we saw it here with Haggerty and Manny Sethi, like the crazier, I don't want to say crazier, the more extreme, more committed to the cause, whatever that may be, the better you do in primaries. Like in a state like Tennessee, you can't come here and, maybe that'll change soon, but it doesn't seem like you can come and be, Governor Kasich. Like he would not do well here, No.
Yeah. That's why you have folks like Andy Ogles, like talking about the fact that they want to run against Bill Lee. Like, we, as everybody who's watching knows, we can't stand Bill Lee. He's horrible. But Andy Ogles would be worse.
Yes, he would. I think, although maybe he's just saying the things Bill Lee is thinking. Couple funnier on the funnier side. Trump finally did I don't know what it was, a press conference, answered a couple of questions, and he did it from a very small desk in front of a fireplace. And then people started taking that and making posts about it. Who wore it better? This tiny desk. This was another one. Somebody put dolls at, and somebody put him next to a mouse hole. This is one of those the internet always wins type things, and it's just too fun to look at these. So I just wanted to commend them, especially this one.
I haven't seen that one. That's hilarious.
Yes. And then this was the tweet that I thought summed it up. Welcome to the resistance, whoever set up Trump's tiny desk today.
Exactly. I'm like, did someone from the Biden?
It had to be on purpose, right?
The optics are just I can only imagine how angry he was about that afterwards too, because he's all about optics. He's all about, how you look on TV, ratings, yada, yada, yada. He looked terrible.
Yes. He's for a guy all about optics. It's hard to imagine how that possibly happened. Robert, I see is saying something about my beard, saying that I need shaving cream. Yes, I could always use some shaving cream. And I probably
drop your tips in the comments.
We're in a pandemic, Robert. Like, don't I get some leeway here?
It's okay. I got a haircut, and my hair is 2 different lengths from the person who cut my hair. So
Well,
can't
speaking
see
of beards, it looks like our guest today is growing one of his own.
Yeah.
Matthew, what's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm good. I think the beard suits me. It just kind of seems obvious.
It does. You cleaned up your neck though, and I think maybe that's what he's responding to. I need to get the neck down here. First of all, good to see you, and we're excited to be doing this with Change, this Chairs Forum. Seems like it's something that should happen all the time, and so if it's got to happen somewhere, it might as well happen here on the Holler. So we're looking forward to it. What made you want to get involved with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Change TN's a nonpartisan organization, right? But I view the Democratic Party as a tool. I think our good friend Rick Herron said it today that it's a vehicle that we all have to get inside of, right? And whichever analogy you want to use, no matter what part of the progressive movement you're in, we do need a well-functioning Democratic Party for now. And the first step that we have the ability to influence is the chairs race. So this is the person, it's a 2-year term. This is the person that's going to decide what staff we have at the state party headquarters, if we have a state party headquarters, and what kind of support is going to come down, working with the executive committee for sure. But really, this is the person that's going to decide what our digital strategy is, that's going to decide, hey, how are we going to do data? And data is a super important thing. I mean, we've all seen how you can sway elections and you can really drive forward important causes if you have the right data to get the right people out to vote.
Right. Data and priorities. And,
yep.
I think it's one of those things where there's a lot of backseat driving around the party, but it's a really big job and there's a lot of races to pay attention to and deal with. And there are only so many resources. So, it's a big problem to solve. And so it's going to take all hands on deck, first of all, but who's in the chair seat really matters. And for the first time, it's open for the first time in, I think, 6 years. So, who fills that role is going to be a really important one. I guess I would ask you, and obviously people can also chime in with what they'd like to hear, but what are some of the questions you would like to hear answered by these nominees? And, obviously we're going to sort of iron that out amongst ourselves between now and then, but what are some top mind ones that you just like to hear from them?
Yeah, I want to hear where they think the party should make investments. Like that's a huge thing, right? So we rely on the state party to do a lot of fundraising. And is that looking to make investments in candidates directly, or saying as a party, we're going to build an immutable infrastructure, right? We're going to build tools for our candidates to use. So where are your investments going to be? Are they going to be in staff, immutable infrastructure and technology and data? Are they going to be directly in candidates? And then I also want to hear coming out of that is what's your recruitment strategy look like?
Right.
Over the past couple of months, or past month, feels like a couple of months, but the past month, we've been trying to recruit for the 2021 races and having a terrible time just to get people to run even the smallest campaigns for city council. So as we move into the next 2022 and some of the bigger elections, we didn't even come close to having every race have an opposition in it across the state this year. And that's something that I think needs to be our, minimum viable strategy, is that we need somebody to run for every election.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Cassie, feel free to jump in, but I was just going to say, it also seems to be something that has to start now. Like we can't start these things 6 months before elections. Like this has to be an ongoing process. We always talk about that here, how elections are just sort of pegs in the road, but they don't stop or start anything. They're just landmarks along the way. This is an ongoing process, and the work has to continue on everybody's part, from registering voters to recruiting candidates to investing, especially in a state like ours where we have so much work to do. Cassie, what are some things you'd like to hear from the candidates?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from the candidates, I would like to hear like how they feel about. I mean, I actually don't know if this is something that's really from the chair's perspective, something that they should even comment on. But this is just from me is like whether they think like how they feel about primary races. I mean, I know Matthew and I talk about this a lot, and Justin, you as well. But just how do they feel about? Because I think that that's healthy for democracy. How do they feel about that? Will they? Because there's a lot of like inter-party politics that happen behind the scenes with like more establishment Democrats, establishment voices that are against primaries. And so I just hope that that's, something that's that they're open to.
Well, having run in a primary when I was running for Congress, didn't want one, got one, and then felt like it was probably the best thing that could have happened. So, big believer in them. I think they make the candidate better. They give the campaign more energy going into the general election for sure. When you feel like you got through something and were successful. Our friend Kennedy is saying she'd like to hear how they plan to train and retain campaign staffers in the state. That's actually a really big question because we have a lot of really talented people that end up going and doing things in other states. Either they're from here going to other states or they came here and then leave. So, building a bench is not just about candidates. It's also about people who work on campaigns. There have been a lot of people who have gotten a lot of experience just because there was nobody else to do it, and I mean, I had a first-time campaign manager. I know that, our friend Angelique went off from my campaign and then ran Elizabeth. So there's a lot of people, and that's good. But also, we need to make sure that once that happens, they don't then move and go to Kentucky, or wherever else. So that's a really good question from Kennedy. And then I think also something that I would like to hear from them is what do they think the role of the chair is? It seems like there's a lot of different ways to define that. You ask a million people, you're going to get a million different answers. But what is the role of the chair in this state? I think Matthew is right to focus on data and specifics and like a real strategy and plan. But also there's a figurehead aspect to the whole thing where you're out there to speak on the things that are important to the party and to the people and, be a voice for everybody. So, and also what their various strengths are and what makes them the right person for this job. I mean, those I think are the basic questions. Stephen says, I'd like to hear how they're going to work to build and develop strategic allies. Another good one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a lot of good questions here. Matthew, if you have anything else you want to talk about before we get to the drafting here.
Yeah. So I think one of the, especially in these things, a lot of times I'll listen and really spend a lot of time before I start pushing on this too hard. But one thing I will call into question is it's said a lot that the chair is going to be the person responsible for rebuilding the party. And I think that's totally wrong. The people that are responsible and that will do the work of rebuilding the party are going to be your staffers, your candidates at the local, municipal, county levels, and state House and state Senate levels. Like that's how you build a party. And just looking at, obviously I was in my campaign and a bunch of different campaigns this last year, and then worked on Marquita Bradshaw's campaign after that. And what we saw over and over again is when you would start out with an up ballot race, Biden-Harris or even the Bradshaw campaign, people would very, very quickly assume where you stood on the political spectrum and decide that they were for you or against you. But then you get down to the level of Heidi Campbell, who was the mayor of Oak Hill, right? So even people that may identify as Republicans say, you know what? Heidi is a thoughtful person. She did a really great job as mayor. I think she'll do good in the state Senate. That's how you build a party, and that's how you build even independent political powers. You get these people that are coming in, right there, Jason says youth. We need to build up, give a lot more investment into the young Democrats as well, because these youth are where campaign staffers come from. It's where candidates come from. And back to that strategic allies thing, I think that what I want to see, and we've had a bunch of conversations with lots of different social welfare organizations around the state is, hey, you all need to be building a bench internally so that when we say, when Change TN puts out the call, hey, we've got 38 municipal races in 2021. I want to see Sunrise Movement. I want to see other organizations. I want to see Planned Parenthood. I want to see all these different organizations coming and saying, hey, you know what? We've been grooming these people for leadership positions inside our orgs, and we think that they would be great for elected office. So we've built a bench for the bench for the bench.
Right.
Right.
We have this huge pipeline of people ready to not only serve in elected positions, but they're ready to serve in appointed positions, which is something that we overlook, and it's something that we're pushing on at Change TN as well. I want to see, progressives sitting on the Greenways Commission. I want to see them sitting on the civil service merit boards around the state. I want to see them sitting on of course, on the police advisory committees. But I want to see progressives on all levels of government, whether it's appointed, whether it's elected, and then the staffers that help underlie all that as well.
And I thought one of the things you hit on there, which I totally agree with, and I've been saying this also, is, when they talk about the party, a lot of times, you go speak to the county parties and they'll be like, is the party helping you? And it's like, no, you're the party. The county parties are where the rubber meets the road. The county parties, the national party isn't coming to save us. The state party, you can't lean on them. The county parties is really where the work gets done, where the rubber meets the road. And, the more ownership the county parties take of everything, the better off everybody is going to be. So, I think that hopefully the next chair, and Mary did this too, she believed that, and, really lifting up the county parties and trying to empower them and give them what they need is really something that's important. For everybody watching now, Matthew did a great interview on a podcast that we put out called The Sunrise Rocky Top. So you can hear more from him. Go subscribe to that and the podcast. And then I know we have some Memphians coming in. Should we bring them in while we do the draft?
Yes. And I think they've got some stuff to say as well.
Oh, they do. Okay, great.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
Hey, y'all.
Welcome.
Jan, Michael Antonio, how's it going?
Not a minute, bud.
You never know who you're going to run into on one of these things.
That's right. It's the crossroads of progressives in Tennessee. How are you guys doing? What's going on over there? And do you have anything to add to the discussion of what you would like to hear from the TNDP Chair Forum group?
Yes, we're doing great. We personally just recovered from coronavirus. Have been battling that the last few weeks and are much better now. So that's really, but COVID cases are skyrocketing in Memphis, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. We do want to talk about the TNDP chair race and what we'd like to see, not only from the candidates, but also from the process. And a lot of people, myself included, until I started digging into this a little more thoroughly, don't know how the TNDP chair is selected or by whom. A lot of people assume that it's a public election, and the voters in Tennessee at large, the voters don't vote on who the TNDP chair will be. And a lot of people aren't aware of that or how the person who will lead the state party will be chosen. The executive committee is who votes on the chair. And that's a group of, about 70 people?
I think there's one for every Senate.
Two for every Senate.
So that means there's probably about 65, 66, something like that.
So a little less than 70 people across the state of Tennessee are the ones who make the decision about who will lead the state party. At this point, they haven't decided what that process will look like.
Yeah.
In any
context. Still working on it.
So even the candidates that are running, and there's a number of candidates across the state at this point that have thrown their hat in the race. They don't know necessarily what that process is going to look like. And it's very hard to navigate a process where people will be voting on whether to select you as their leader when you don't even know what the process will look like.
It sure is.
It's true. There's just to interject a little bit, there's actually a sort of subcommittee within the executive committee of some, I think they're mostly newer members who are, I don't necessarily know the makeup of this entire subcommittee, but they are kind of like, they're coming into this race. This is maybe the first race that they will have been a part of since joining the board. And they're like, wait, there's no process for this. And so there are actually people who are, some of those members are working on creating a process. Because I mean, I totally agree. It's insane that it doesn't exist. There's no job description for the chair.
Right.
They don't have it. There's no job description.
But they had this process 2 years ago, so something must have existed.
All it was is a vote, and no one had to. You could declare the day of. Like we could have showed up in that room. Like I went to support Holly. And so like I could have said, hey, I want to run for chair. And I could have done it then and there.
So, and it's probably worth noting that this process that they put in place could be totally abandoned on the day of the vote. Right. So there's nothing. And by the way, the people that, have declared thus far, they don't have to declare. There could be somebody running that we don't know about that's just calling executive committee members. Although I have, my face is in the rumor mill that we know everybody, but they could totally abandon this process on the day of the vote.
We might need to talk to somebody from the executive committee at some point. Jen, I know you wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah.
Just a couple of other points on that, on the process itself. The candidates themselves don't know what the process is ultimately going to look like. And although there aren't, it hasn't been finalized what the process will be, there are rules in the bylaws that prevent certain things from happening. And that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about today. So the way that the voting is done, or at least has been done, unless they decide to change it this time around, is that the vote goes from east to west in order of district number, which means we in Memphis go last or very close to last. And there have been attempts to change the order of the voting to make it more fair, to make it a blind vote, for example, so that you're not hearing who is voting for whom as that process is going on. If it were done by silent ballot or secret ballot, then everybody just votes at the same time. And at the end of the process, you find out who won. But the way that it's set up is the vote goes from east to west. So people organize with certain very influential members of the executive committee in the east. And if they can secure those votes, then everyone listening in on the call, or if it were an in-person vote, they're hearing one person after the other.
So it's influential, right?
Vote for the same person. And so they're pressured socially to vote in a certain way. And then back to another transparency issue that Cassie, I think, brought up. We do have one person who's declared that they are running, that I won't call out by name, but they are an EC member, which means they're going to have a little bit of an insider perspective over the other candidates about the process as it's being formed. Sure. Those are some of the issues we wanted to highlight, and I know we wanted to the impact of those things since we're from Memphis.
Those are all really good issues. And again, if anybody has questions that they want asked of the candidates next week, feel free to either comment along, message us on any of our social mediums, or email us at the tnholler@gmail.com. We're going to have 2 back-to-back nights because there are, at least that we know of, 8 or 9 candidates. So we want people to have time to talk. If we did it all at once, it would be kind of madness. So we're splitting it up. And unless anybody has anything further they'd like to add right here, we can talk again after. I'm going to go ahead and draft them out of this hat right here. This
we all drum roll with me?
Patriotic Holler hat. Let me make sure I have everybody in here. Hang on. 1, 2, 3.
I love
4,
that you picked the hunter's hat.
The hunter's hat, yes. All right, here we go.
Nothing more patriotic.
I also nobody has bought those yet. That's part of why we do have a camo Holler hat. Everybody, if you want one of these. All right, here we go. This is going to be. We're going to do 1 and 1.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to do one from the first night first. Here we go. This is the first. Is that the drum roll? All right, night 1. I gotta unravel these quicker. Here we go. London Lamar, Representative London Lamar.
Hey, all right.
Is in the first group.
Night 1.
Somebody writing this down, or we can go back and watch the feed.
I am writing it down.
Okay, good. The first one in the second night. This way we're okay. I don't know if this person's actually running. Do you say it anyway?
Why do you think they're running?
We haven't confirmed her yet.
She's the only one that we haven't confirmed.
All right, so I'm going to leave her out for now.
Okay.
All right. We don't have her. All right, night 2. Robin Kimbrough Hayes is night 2.
Hey, all right.
All right, we're back to night 1 here. This is with London Lamar, and she will be zooming next to Theron Bond and London Lamar.
Got the
That
Memphis
is
going
double
on.
Memphis action. That's probably going to be good for ratings. Those two next to each other.
Well, we'll be
There we
watching.
go. Night 2 is Jane George. So Robin Kimbrough Hayes and Jane George.
Good stuff.
And now joining Theron and London, we have, let's see who this is. Wade Monday with Theron and London Lamar. Okay, we have 3 more to go by my count, and then the one person that we don't know if she's in yet.
I know. I'm gonna message the group really quickly to see if
I asked her
if any of us know.
Okay, this is night 2. This is Civil Miller Watkins. So Civil is night 2, and then the final entries. First, we'll do night 1. This is Hendrell Remus, and that leaves. Who do we know? Oh, that leaves Kate Craig, I believe, for night 2.
For night 2, okay.
Yes. All right. So to recap, night 1 is Theron Bond, Wade Monday, London Lamar, and Hendrell Remus, and night 2 is Robin Kimbrough Hayes, Jane George, Kate Craig, Civil Miller Watkins, and possibly the mystery woman.
The mystery candidate.
If she wants in.
Which night? What are the dates of those?
What are the dates? These are good questions. Here, let's flash this. This is the chairs race. I need to get the banner out of the way. December 9th and 10th at 7 p.m. right here on the Holler. You will have 4 and 4 unless we have a 5th in night 2. And I think those are fun groupings. I could think of a lot of reasons those are fun. I like that London and Theron are in the same group, the Memphians. And there's more Memphians in here too, I think. But join us that night. And please, again, send us your questions. Send us your comments. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to know from these candidates. We've talked about some of the questions here today, but I'm sure other things will come up. We can get a lot more specific. And we're going to go, I think, for an hour with the 4 of them. So they'll all have time to talk and you'll get to know them. We did this in the Senate race before Marquita was the nominee, and it went really well. And we got a lot of good feedback from people that was a good chance for them to really understand who the people were. So we want to try to do that as much as possible. Change TN is doing this with us. Matthew, where can they find information about Change?
You can go to our social medias, Change TN, or go to our website, changetn.vote.
Okay. And then Jan and Michael Antonio, any final thoughts here for us as we exit here? We'll be back on Thursday at 2 p.m. again. So if you have any thoughts, you can come back to us with them then.
Yeah, I guess one final thing is, as we go into this process, we don't need to think about this in terms of necessarily, personalities that we like to see, or who knows who we want to be on the as the chairperson. This is more about setting expectations. Because for a long time now, the Tennessee Democratic Party has not done what needs to be done to push back against the Republican supermajority in this state. We see how they take care of their own with DeBerry. And so now, we need as Democrats in Tennessee to set expectations, to demand guarantees from the next party chair. Whoever it is, it needs to be someone that's going to rise to the challenge of meeting guarantees such as, basically perpetual voter registration, and things like that. And so that's something that I think we need to
absolutely
on the way to this vote.
Yeah, completely.
Very well said. Absolutely, yes. Perpetual voter registration
expand the electorate.
Yeah, and we often hear that it's not worth the time and and the resources because it's so difficult, but it absolutely is. It's essential, and it's got to be a year-round project.
Yeah,
and so I completely agree with you there. So we will see you guys Thursday at 2 p.m. And then again, Chairs Race Forum with Change TN and the Tennessee Holler will be 9th and 10th, 7 p.m. Central. We will post and email the candidates and let them know who's going to be when. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be great to hear from everybody, and it'll just be a good time, again, like Michael Antonio just said, to set expectations. So we will see you next week and also on Thursday. Thank you all for joining us here on the Holler. Appreciate you.
Thank you for having us always.
Thank you.
Thank you all.